The answer is yes. Fanfiction can be considered a literary work, and some of you are just very mean and elitist about it, so I decided I'm gonna answer this from a publishing standpoint. Hi, I'm Hazel. Once again, Twitter has brought back the discourse of is fanfic considered literature and are fanfic authors considered writers? And even though this argument comes up on Twitter every few months, this has been a long-standing literary discourse for ages, which is ironic considering how many literary works are actually considered fanfiction. So I pose the question, why do literary people hate fanfic authors so much? The answer is misogyny. For the most part, I think it's just misogyny. A teenage girl or an adult woman writing about their favorite characters from a TV show, book, movie, either with themselves as a self-insert, with two characters being paired up, is always way more heavily scrutinized than any other piece of literary fiction. As seen of these tweets here, which is what re-sparked the discourse, there seems to be a huge aim towards women and girls in fandom. They said somewhere in their tweets, which you can no longer find because they're on private, and I'm not going to put the person's name is on here because you've probably seen it and they've gotten enough flack as it is, but they did say in their tweets that they were either in college or already graduated with an English literary major or something. So I thought, hey, if you're going to use your degree to be a dick, I'm going to use my job experience to tell you that you're wrong. And what I'm about to say is, it's pretty much the same thing. All these written works are the same thing. A quick backstory if you don't follow me on Twitter, I used to work in publishing for about 2 years, specifically in romance publishing. And while I have since left because I did not have a good time, I did learn a lot in the publishing world, specifically around marketing and something called commercial fiction. In high school, I was part of a literary club, and then after college, I was helping publish a lot of fanzines, including moderating them, writing for them, or even formatting and printing. But for college, I went to school for criminal justice, and the only kind of creative writing class I took was a script writing because I minored in film and have done nothing with it. So that being said, I did not know that there were certain categories when it came to fiction writing. So when I ended up joining this publishing company and learned about commercial fiction, I was surprised to see what type of fiction this was. Hi, voiceover Hazel here. So I wanted to re-record this part because I didn't like how I initially explained it. So what I was basically trying to say was I had just assumed most people who went into the creative writing major wanted to write kind of like their magnum opus. And so I wasn't expecting what commercial fiction was. And essentially the summary of commercial fiction is fiction that is supposed to be written for the mass media in order to just sell a lot of copies. And in order to do that, they have to write a kind of story that a general audience can understand, which usually means it's very tropey, very easy. And that's not to say that that's lesser than other media. It's just the goal of it is just to sell as fast as possible. So they just want a story that is easy for people to pick up and easy to read. Commercial fiction actually falls into this category, which is why you see a lot of the same type of book covers or book tropes. Stories about cowboys, billionaires, some type of like sexy man and a sexy woman. It's because these are the stories that the market is looking for. The targeted audience are usually adult women who can insert themselves as the character and for a brief moment fall into this world and fall in love with their ideal type of guy. The company that I worked for published between 2 to 3 books per week, with each author writing at least 3 to 5 books in a series. These series would contain around the same themes, such as cowboy brothers, bosses and secretaries, a strong alpha male falling for a meek, shy, but independent girl. No, I'm not talking about ABO, but I will touch on that again. As I've said, commercial fiction's main goal is to sell, therefore they're going to need tropes that are going to sell, which tropes that happen to be in fanfiction. Fake dating meets cute, exes to lovers, friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers. There's also career romances. You meet in the office, he's the boss, she's the secretary, he's a singer, she's a small-time girl. Small-time girl? Small-town girl. She's a school teacher. He's a single dad whose kid happens to be in her class. He's a paramedic. She's the girl who fell out of a building. And if you want to get into the spicier sections, obviously BDSM, sex sells, ABO. For whoever decided publishing ABO was a good idea, no, that wasn't. Everything else is fine, not the ABO. And in all contemporary romances, it has a happy ending, which is actually a criteria, otherwise you can't actually call it contemporary romance. And it's also why the Hallmark Channel is so successful during the holidays. You know, you see the same 30 posters of the same white guy, white girl wearing Christmas clothes, but they're a billion-dollar company because those are the type of stories that sell. Fanfic writers are just doing the same thing, but with characters already established. So you said, oh, I didn't like how this scenario in the show turned out. Let me rewrite my own version. Oh, I think these two characters should have ended up together unlike these two. I'm gonna write an entire thing where these two become the main couple. I think he would work well as a firefighter and him as a chef. I'm going to write them in those careers. I think these characters deserve to get nodded. And if you're a consumer of, say, that media and you wanted something more, you turn to fanfiction for that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the difference between fanfic writing and contemporary romance writing, is that someone is getting paid to write this, the other person isn't. I personally fall into the category of fanfiction when it comes to stuff I want to read, only because I personally like the familiar I like reading things that make me familiar, if that makes any sense. And I don't think that should be a problem. There's a lot of people who decide to go into fiction, maybe not fan fiction, but reading in general to escape into a different world. So why is it that you respect someone who's being paid for that, but you totally disregard someone who isn't? It's actually really funny to me whenever I see people get so genuinely insulted when some rando on Twitter just says, oh, I think this writer is better than this published writer. Oh, I like this fanfic more than this piece of media. And then they have to go on this huge tirade about like how fanfic authors aren't real, they didn't get the same education, this person rode up a hill and wrote on pen and paper and had to make their own pencil in order to get here. Like, where is this anger coming from? And especially bringing up when it comes to education, like, oh, you don't deserve to be a writer because you didn't study literary work. I did. If you live in America, you should know college is expensive. And you don't just learn in a classroom. Something that I've always been told, like, within the fanfic community, is you become a better writer by reading. Hi, it's voiceover Hazel one more time. I just wanted to add here that yes, school is necessary for a basic understanding of like structure, grammar, of understanding themes in books, but what I'm saying is that a post-secondary education, specifically college or master's, isn't necessary, and I don't think should determine if you are a writer or not, as there are many non-college authors out there, as well as a lot of college writers who ended up publishing really crappy things. And again, as someone who did work in publishing for 2 years, I can tell you that we've published some really, really bad writing. Some books and manuscripts that we saw and was going through the editors and we thought, no, we should not be picking this up. Don't publish this. But then we got overridden and then they said, okay, go publish it. So we published it. And then the reviews come in, all the reviews saying this is horrible, this is terrible. This seems racist. Yes, some romance novels that are clearly racist would still get published. Then there's gonna be backlash that it's ugh. So anyway, just because you're a published author doesn't mean you're a good writer. Keep in mind though, I've read both amazing published works, amazing published fan fiction. I've read really shitty published books, and I've read really shitty fan fiction. And it's from that I realized I think what most people are trying to say whenever they try to connect something and say that, oh, this is just fan fiction, it's horrible. I think what they're trying to say is that it's bad writing, and that's not a bad thing to call something bad writing. Bad writing exists everywhere. For example, Dexter Season 8. I've never watched it, but my friend cried because he hated it that much. I did watch Season 6 through 8 of Game of Thrones. I can tell you that was bad writing. There's also bad published books. People still arguably say Twilight isn't a well-written book, but it was published. And there's been horrible fan fiction that's also been published on the internet. And anyone in the Avatar fandom, you guys old enough to remember How I Became Yours? If you do, That's some really bad writing in comics. And I think you should just call it what it is, bad writing. Just because you think something is a fan fiction doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I think it's just the writing was off. They weren't following what they were following before, and you don't need fan fiction to do that. Some people would arguably say fan fiction fixes the bad writing of a show. So call it what it is, bad writing. And in case you weren't aware, there's actually a lot of media out there that is technically fan fiction, but no one sees it that way because it's being published by an official source, so to them it's not fan fiction. Here are my controversial takes, and please do not come after me if you haven't already. Riverdale. Riverdale is an edgy fan fiction of the Archie comics. Spider-Man Homecoming technically wasn't based off of any Spider-Man comic. It's an original concept, but with elements taken from the original Peter Parker. And it's a good movie. Enola Holmes and Elementary, they are fan fictions of Sherlock Holmes. The Mortal Instrument started as a Harry Potter fanfic. After is a One Direction self-insert love drama. Dante's Inferno, wasn't that fanfiction from the Bible? Like, Bible fanfics exist. Overall, I just think it doesn't look good when you're disregarding a writer because they're not writing what you consider literary work. And please don't take this the wrong way. Someone's probably going to say, oh, can I call myself a doctor even though I don't have a degree? No, you can't do that. That's not what I'm saying. And maybe it's because the arts are harder to determine when you are allowed to call yourself that profession. Are you allowed to call yourself a writer when you're published? Or are you a writer because you're writing? Are you an artist because you sell your piece of artwork? Or just because you're drawing? And I think if you're doing what the definition of that career is, you should be able to call yourself that. It just reminds me of those really shitty people at conventions who purposely go into Artist Alley, start insulting the Artist Alley work, and just not buy anything. But at the same time, they're consuming the media that the artists are based off of. If you go to an anime convention and you're shitting on an Artist Alley table for drawing in an anime style, what are you even doing there? You can't consume the media, but also shit on the people who make it. There are a lot of people who began as fan artists and later on moved to industry jobs. And there's also a lot of artists who maybe went from fan art to original artwork, or artists who just do really well in fan art. And it's not fair to determine at what stage of their career are you allowed to call them an artist. At the end of the day, you don't have to read fan fiction. You don't have to follow fanfic authors. And maybe if you want to avoid those kind of opinions, you shouldn't be in fandom in general. But if you are active in fandom, you're consuming fan fiction, you're consuming fan art, but then you're also shitting on the people who are creating all that, it's just not a good look, and that's why people get upset. You don't have the right to read something that someone took their time to write and then tell them that they're not actually a writer. If you're angry that I defended fanfic authors, then maybe one, you should have clicked out of this video, and second, go support a local indie bookstore. Go to a library and rent out the books you want. But for those who stuck around and want to support their favorite fanfic writers, donate to their Ko-fis or just promote their work because, you know, it's hard out there, especially as a writer. So help each other out. So that's it. Because every few months this discourse comes back again and again, and it's honestly quite annoying. I think just what's most important is don't write and publish ABO because white women will sue your ass. Okay, bye.